Cool, and we're ready to go. Thomas, appreciate you having you on the podcast this morning. How's life for you, and how's business going at the moment with JMW and yourself?
Good, thank you. Well, firstly, thank you very much for the invitation and for inviting me onto the podcast. I've been looking forward to it. Life's good, thank you. We're in a bit of strange times at the moment because the country's in lockdown, and that's something that we've never experienced before. So it's all a new experience in light of Zoom and Skype and different calls and working with our teams and with our clients remotely. But communication's key, isn't it? And it's certainly led to a lot more conversations, people speaking far more frequently, arguably than they possibly ever did.
For sure, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, similar to yourself, I've had so many people, and you'll have this, people wanting to get Zoom calls booked in, Skype calls, whatever platform you use. But it tends to be Zoom. I think Zoom has been sort of the most popular one, hasn't it, really? But yeah, I think it's definitely nice to catch up with people. I think people are innovating. It's nice to see people that I thought I'd never be able to get on a Zoom call. Some investors, for example, I've even had a Zoom call with, and it's like, wow, it's difficult to get you on the phone or a WhatsApp call, let alone a bloody Zoom call. So, yeah, no, it's been a welcome change, and I think it's nice to see how people are operating, how people are sort of trying to obviously get out of the situation as much as they can do. But communication is key, and I think it's now we're going to see the businesses, we're going to see the law firms, we're going to see the property developers that are doing this sort of innovation and keeping clear communication, which is, I guess, the ones that are going to be coming out with the strong momentum when it all settles down, really.
Yeah, I certainly agree. You're right. Momentum's key, and we've obviously had last year was a quirky year with, although it's still ongoing, Brexit and the general election, and then we had the alleged Boris bounce before COVID hit in. So whilst we're in lockdown at the moment, you're right, it's not one way we just sit back and think, right, there's not much we can do about it, because actually there's plenty that can be done. People can still have conversations, people can still discuss and explore and see what opportunities there are. And fundamentally, not just on a business level, but also on a personal level, help out one another. The impact that this will have, I think, for some people in terms of their lives, how they work, their work-life balance, and also the community aspect can't be overlooked. I think that's vital.
For sure. And I think you're definitely right. I think in terms of helping others, I think regardless of what position you're in within any form of company or whoever you are, it's affected you around the world in some way. Of course, unfortunately, some more than others. And I think as humanity, and as obviously, especially from the UK and the local area, if we can do as much as we can, I mean, sort of my mum works within sort of the Manchester City Council and sort of the food banks. We're obviously sort of the other side of sort of probably a lot of us that we probably sort of colleagues that we speak with, sort of how they live. And it's just crazy. Like literally there's no food at all for any of the food banks. It's nothing. And it's like these families are going to be sort of, well, we're trying to do everything we can to keep them alive. And it's like, I think definitely now more than ever, we've got to stick together. We've got to push through it. And I believe we can. And I think you'll see from social media, you'll see what others are doing, and it's nice to see. Whether you're a business that's got a couple of hundred staff, whether you're doing an SME business, whatever you are, it's nice to see people chipping in and becoming that community, which I guess what everyone likes to be. Thomas, in terms, obviously, from your standpoint then, because obviously, I mean, if you give the audience a bit of background, brief background, obviously yourself, but obviously in terms of the law field that you operate in, how is, I mean, after the introduction, how is that going for you guys at the moment? So where does as a lawyer within the market, as real estate, as property, where are you at, and where are things, what's going to happen over the next sort of 3 to 6 months, really, in terms of your role and sort of the firm's role and where you see it on a bigger picture as well?
Okay, so from my perspective, I'm a partner in JMW's real estate team. That team across the country, because we have 3 offices, is circa 200 people. So it's a decent real estate offering. And I specialise myself in development work across care, residential and student, and retail. Manchester is a fantastic market. I mean, I've been up in Manchester now for about 7 years and in the Northwest for circa 20 years. And it's certainly got a good attitude to getting things done. One can only needs to look at the skyline and see what's going on, albeit slightly paused in the current circumstances. Where we are as a firm and what we've been doing, well, prior to the beginning of March, for a lot of people, it was fully cracking on and very, very busy and productive. That's not to say we're not at the moment. Certainly, even in a lockdown, myself and the team have been very, very busy. Clients still need work done. New transactions and new instructions are still coming in different sectors, and we're keeping churning those and getting them done. There are challenges that are faced with that, but if we roll our sleeves up and focus on using the likes of Zoom and different technology, the work, for instance, and I'm sure many other businesses teams have done to get everybody set up to work remotely. I mean, I've always been working remotely myself in the evenings, etc. So it wasn't a big shift for me, to be honest, but for others, a big shift, and making sure we've got all the systems in place to deal with, the smallest things like sending TTs to get completions done and receipt of monies. In a wider context, in terms of what's going on, your question on 3 to 6 months, or if I had a crystal ball, I mean, yes, and as I'm sure many others are following the news, I have to say I'm probably more focused on getting the work done at the moment than sitting back and having plenty of time to watch the news, because it is very, very busy. I can't hasten to not add that, but this will, and what has gone on will have an impact, not trickle necessarily, but the impact, I suppose, is a different way. So as I see it at the moment, there will be a deep impact. I don't necessarily mean that in a wholly negative way, by the way, but some sectors were immediate: retail, leisure, hospitality. Then came investors and landlords, the impact of the retail, leisure and hospitality, the announcements the government made in relation to no action on forfeiture, both in the or possession in a residential scenario or forfeiture in a commercial scenario till the 30th of June. That impacts the investor landlords. We've then seen the impact on the construction market in terms of can workers work on site? Can they not work on site? I've got some clients who are still on site, others where, understandably in the current scenario, subbies, etc., can't get to site. There's then the suppliers of that, your Travis Perkins and the likes of that. Next one probably might be an impact on values, because one doesn't know how deep this will be felt as to whether it comes back, and I'll give some thoughts on that in a second. Then the likes of, say, an auction house, they've adapted. A lot of them are online anyway, and they're still running their auctions and running them successfully. How do they take photos and images and videos of their new stock? How do they get those new instructions in? So it's a case of finding a balance really for everything in the country on it. In relation to the market, certainly if we focus Northwest first, the Northwest has been a very buoyant market, and there's been a lot going on recently. We'd certainly benefited from this bounce, as some people have called it, post-Brexit and post-general election. But there are some people in the market, I saw some commentary yesterday actually, that there is this view that there is a pent-up demand, and that whether it's 3 months or whether it's 6 months, that within, say, 9 to 12 months, the market will be back where it was, if not probably better, is a view. And I'm an optimist myself, and I have to say this will have an effect, but I think we will get back to where we were, and I do believe it will be stronger as well.
For sure. No, I appreciate you giving us a breakdown of that. I think definitely the market will be stronger once it gets back to normal. I think, like I said before, because it is literally affecting everyone, whether you're in property, whatever industry you are in, it's got to come back. It's got to come back to normal. And like I said, I believe, an optimist myself, it will come back stronger than ever. In terms, obviously, with clients-wise, obviously, I appreciate being obviously in the law field. There's confidentiality agreements and all that kind of stuff of what you can say and what you can't say. As a client now of yourself, Thomas, and obviously with the firm, what sort of things in terms of what are you looking to try and do with the clients over these next 3 to 6 months? Because you mentioned obviously you work within sort of the development sector with obviously like student, resident, sort of different asset classes. What are you guys going to be doing? Obviously, I don't expect you to give like the full nitty gritty stuff, but things in place obviously that start with obviously the Zoom calls, keeping in touch with your clients. But how do you see it affecting clients, and what can you do as a firm to make sure that you're adding as much value as you can in this interesting period, if we put it that way?
I think the first things come back to what we talked about earlier. I am a big believer in communication. And whilst I'm on the tools doing the work, I'm also out there speaking to people. the more communication's key. We as a firm sort of pride ourselves on, and you can't have this with every client, it depends on the relationship, but with a lot of them, we've got long-standing clients that we've acted for a very long time, and we almost act as a bit like quasi in-house legal counsel. So for instance, last night I was on the phone with one of my clients for nearly an hour and a half last night, and we talked through everything we had on transactionally, and there's still a lot on. New instructions, 2 new instructions on for that client came in this week. We're progressing to probably about 3 exchanges this week and 2 completions, and more teed up next week, and more in the pipeline due to come in next week. So clients are still busy. The key really is to communicate. Importantly, from our perspective, it's the communication that I'm going to say business as normal in inverted commas, in that we as a firm and many other professional sectors, we've still got to work. There's still work to be done and clients need things done. So we've had to adapt. Some of the systems in place that we've got in as a business were already there. Others we've had to adapt, and credit to our management team and credit to our IT team who've been working around the clock to get things in place and systems and processes, which means that we can work remotely and deliver the service to our clients. In a service industry, service levels are key. So communication and talking your clients through. Some of my colleagues have produced blogs and different things, and as we're a full service law firm, views on employment issues, the new concepts of what's happening there from an employment perspective, what's happening in terms of the grants and loans and relief that's available from the government, what's happening in terms of landlords and investors and the ability to get your rent in and how you deal with some of those elements. So we've been producing blogs, and I've certainly been out contacting clients, sending it via emails, and also speaking to them and talking it all through. There's an element of, and I don't want to sound patronizing anyway, but a hand-holding exercise and a reciprocal one to reassure those clients and equally seek reassurance from them of where they are in their projects. Understandably, some projects may well go on pause or have paused. Arguably, were those the ones that were going to progress so quickly? I don't know. But other ones, like I said before, I work in the care market, medical centres and new build care homes, and that's green light and, pressing on all of those projects at the moment.
For sure. And I think, like we say, communication is everything, because there's so much, like I said, coming from the government as well, there's so much information out there right now, and it is advising clients on what works for their current situation, because every business will have a different scenario slightly. And I think it's work with the right people to understand what sort of position they can be in a week's time or 2 weeks' time to make sure they can plough through this difficult period. We could sit here all day, Thomas, and say about the sort of coronavirus and obviously the effects on business, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of interested parties. But I want to take you back to the early days.
Okay.
With personally yourself, obviously, I know we discussed off camera with you living abroad and living in Hong Kong, I believe, and understanding and learning several languages. I struggle to speak English at times, so I'm always amazed and fascinated of people that can speak multiple languages. How is that, in terms of growing up abroad in a place like Hong Kong? It's a place that I've been a few times for business. How is that, in terms of obviously understanding different languages, how has that affected your career over sort of the last, however long you've been in property and law? And just give us sort of a round sort of a summary on that, really.
Yeah, so as you said, I was born in Hong Kong. My father was in the military, and I've been privileged to live in a number of different countries, predominantly in Asia, whilst I grew up. I think it's given me a better understanding and view that obviously, and relevant to the situation at the moment, we live in a global society. We all have different cultures and values. And the more you can understand that and the integration and difference between that, I think is important. In life, you are the sum of your experiences, in my view, and so the more experiences you can have, the more it makes you a more rounded individual. From a languages perspective, I find it interesting. I suppose I'm not one, and this isn't me lambasting those that do, but I wouldn't want to go abroad and just assume that people should speak my language. So whilst it might not be one that I know very well, I'll make a point of getting to know the simple basics to be able to hold a conversation. So last year I went to Italy for the first time ever. Seems strange that I've never been there before. Apart from, actually, I did go there earlier in the year when on the way to Mippin, the flight was diverted because we couldn't land in Nice, but that doesn't really count. But I got on a an audio book and made a point of learning some Italian so that I could have a conversation and talk to people when I was there, because I think that's important, to show an empathy and an understanding with people and not just expect them to speak your language. I find it interesting. Probably the one I'm most fluent in apart from English is French. And I spent a lot of time when I was growing up over in France and had a pen pal. I mean, we spoke more than necessarily writing to one another, but I woke up at probably about 12, 13, and I'd had a dream in French, and I didn't in my head. And I don't speak it as frequently as I do now because I live in England a lot, but I still keep up with it with movies and the radio, and sometimes for business as well. But literally, I don't translate in my head. I just have a French part of the head and an English part of my head, and it works that way. So yeah, I enjoy learning languages and embracing different cultures.
For sure. No, I'm always amazed and massive respect to you, because I mean, I've tried. The reason why I say that is because I mean, I've tried to learn. I went to China to the roadshow for one of our projects about 18 months ago now, and I came back and I thought to myself, right, well, because we were going around places like Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou at the time, just sort of meeting different agents, meeting sort of investors, and obviously doing like a round table. So always like a sort of like a speed dating thing where we sat down with an agent, promoted the product, and then hopefully, obviously, that led to a sale. And I was thinking, if I can speak Mandarin, if I was obviously a ginger chap coming from Manchester, I could speak Mandarin. So that'd be pretty cool to these guys, surely. And anyway, came back from China, hired a Mandarin teacher. Quickly realised that I just couldn't do it. It was extremely difficult. It was a lot harder than French and German was at school. So unfortunately, not that one on the head, but I do want to readdress it. So no,
But I don't think one doesn't need to be fluent necessarily. Simply the ability to say hello, thank you, please, or my name is, and then moreover, not just the languages, but understand the culture. For instance, over in Asia, you'll have noticed that there's a certain way one presents their business card.
Of course, yes.
And then inspects it for about 45 seconds thereafter.
Exactly. And it's, when I first went to Hong Kong, everyone, all the agents and partners we worked, everyone sort of prepped me, because I was sort of asking what sort of things to do. For example, when we first went over, and sort of any mannerisms and all that kind of stuff. And the business card was obviously the main thing. And it's still to say, all the agents that work, even though they've emailed me hundreds of times, they still ask for my business card. It's a bit strange, but anyway. And after the first meeting that I went to in Hong Kong, it was with a quite large client, actually. And because I was not nervous, I wasn't nervous about meeting them. I was nervous about making sure I hadn't presented my business card. And because I was that nervous, for some reason, I did it wrong. And I was like,
oh, no.
It's crazy. But I think definitely understanding languages, and like you said, understanding how these guys operate overseas, it's massive. And I think that's it comes down to communication as well. If you can understand that someone has trust in you, it's just a bit easy to get business done. I
think from a business perspective as well, it's also important to understand the psyche a little bit and how they work. So we do a lot with the Asian market, and I've got quite a lot of Asian clients, investors. There's been a lot of investment within the UK from Asia, and we go out there for business trips as well. And certainly there's a different mantra to how work gets done, work hours, and the drive that they have and the enthusiasm. Thirst for knowledge really on some stuff. They keep asking questions. I want to know stuff, which is good. But it's important to know, I guess, in any client relationship, it's important to sort of strike the right balance of how that relationship is going to work, the level of communication that exists on that relationship, and how you deliver a service to them.
For sure, definitely. No, I couldn't agree more. It's I think definitely it's that relationship with the client, because you'll know more than anyone, Thomas, working in the property industry. Once you get, especially whether it's a high net worth client, for example, once these guys have got your trust overseas, you've got a client for life. And all you've got to do is obviously keep relevant, keep appropriate, keep adding value, doing it as best as you can do for them. And you'll never have to worry about sort of getting a client again from them. So I think for us, that's a business that we always focus on, is especially in this time, because transactions aren't going to be a bit slightly lower than normal. It's going to be the same for everyone. It's not going to be, of course, there is always going to be sort of booming industries in any sort of difficult time. But I think definitely for property, it's more so than ever that what value can we offer to the clients? Like I said, the communication, the Zoom, webinars.
I'm a massive believer in, added value goes beyond just those elements. I don't want to sound too cheesy, but that added value and that ability to connect people, that's how I really do business and how I think I've grown my client base. speaking to people, being open, but looking for the opportunities to introduce. I was on the phone yesterday to a land buyer, and he's got some clients who are looking for certain types of land requirements. Now, I've got some other people who've got those land requirements, so I've simply hooked them up. Hopefully it comes to something. If it does, that's great. That's how business happens. I remember I was involved in 2008 in the start of a law firm with some other people, and it was an amazing experience. The decision had been made before the recession kicked in. We started a law firm and did really, really well. I was there for 4 years, and that experience of working in and elements of managing and being involved in a law firm, starting from scratch and during a recession, was really interesting. You know, we acquired arguably more of a market share as opposed to necessarily new business and new things happening because of the financial circumstances. But the importance of connecting people can't be taken away. Tomorrow I'm hosting a Zoom virtual room with about 30 people in it, having a chat, not doom and gloom, but focusing on what the opportunities are and seeing how we and the other people in that Zoom room can help one another in the current circumstances and opportunities, and take them forward, because that's how business gets done, quite frankly.
It does definitely. And especially, I think when an introduction comes from a trusted party, that sort of process, because that individual, that company, that entity trusts them, getting the business and getting it sort of efficient and getting that relationship going is just a lot easier, rather than obviously just approaching the business in a cold manner. So definitely business is all about connecting people, the right people as well. I think the property world is a small world in many ways. And I don't, you'll know more than anyone, Tom, it's just finding those right people that can do what they say they can do, and are quite proactive, and obviously someone that you can trust as well. In terms of, like with any industry, Thomas, in terms of, there's obviously good professionals, bad professionals that could be improved. In terms of with real estate law and property, I mean, in terms of the market, I mean, if we talk about sort of the Northwest, where do you see, in terms of what makes a good lawyer and what doesn't make a good lawyer, where do you see people could be, for example, when you're dealing with clients or you're dealing with other law firms and transactions, in terms of like as an individual sort of taking a step out the industry, where could you see lawyers today in this market improve and innovate? Is it comes down to, like you've said, for example, connecting people, adding that value, or is it sort of understanding law more, studying more? What sort of things can a lawyer do today in property that will allow them to level up in terms of their game and what sort of the amount of clients that they work with?
I'd say technical expertise is obviously important, but that can be learned. We've talked about the connectivity and everything, so I'll pass on that. From a transactional perspective, the important thing is our job effectively is to facilitate, yes, to protect our client's interest, but to facilitate a transaction. So you want to buy and there's another party that wants to sell and I'm acting for you. You want that transaction done. You will have certain commercial demands in relation to it, whether at some point you're aiming to get funding for it and what the funder says, and subject to the funder's position and being able to cover them off. They've got to be protected. If you're not buying with any funds and it's your own cash, you can take far more commercial views. If I'm acting on the seller's side, fundamentally you want to sell that asset and you want to get it done, quite frankly, as quickly as possible. There are some realities to that in terms of the due diligence, the other elements, the other parties involved that might affect it. But our job as the transactional lawyer or lawyers in that is to facilitate that transaction. The quicker it happens, the quicker everybody can move on to the next transaction, or the quicker there are funds available for the next transaction, and that people get paid. It's quite simple, really.
For sure, definitely. I think I'm always looking at different industries, looking at property as a sort of industry itself, and trying to work out really sort of how people can be improved. And I think definitely, especially with a lot of listeners that will be listening to this, maybe a young lawyer who's just graduated, for example, just finished the sort of course, the degree. So, and I appreciate you giving a bit of highlight on that. In terms, obviously, from the sort of questions that we obviously asked off camera, one of the questions, sort of the answer that I got back was obviously that your wife was a chartered surveyor at CBRE, and she's obviously got a wealth of experience working in the property sector, working at obviously a credible firm like CBRE. How is that, as obviously with a sort of sophisticated lady being your wife, and obviously her being such an expert on property, how has that affected your career, and how does it work? Sort of, do you guys do a lot of business together? Is it sort of you collaborate a lot with CBRE? How does that work, and how has that benefited your career?
Yeah, I think it helps. I think it helps from an obviously confidentiality is important and vital on both sides. What Sarah does and what I do, but equally having that empathy and understanding of work. So, for instance, I do a lot of business development and I do a lot of work, and so the hours that puts in, and Sarah does as well. So, having somebody who gets the sector makes a difference, and then equally, sometimes you've got a question or a query on a no names basis, and that could be useful to run past and discuss and understand in terms of collaboration. From a CBRE perspective, yeah, I mean, we work with a number of different agents, national and regional as well, but a very good relationship with CBRE. I knew quite a lot of Sarah's colleagues before she joined there anyway. More recently, in the current climate, we've been doing trying to help out CBRE. They've got a push in terms of getting parking and available beds, etc., near NHS. So I've been liaising with one of Sarah's colleagues, Neil Kirkham, in the Northwest with our clients, following up and providing hopefully quite a lot of opportunities and resource for that. But it definitely benefits.
Definitely. I think like you touched the nail on the head there. I think my partner's in sort of the property sector herself, and I think just understanding that the sector that we're in is never a straight road, and you do sometimes need to take a call later on at night, for example, with a client, or an early morning call for an overseas client, for example. So, no, definitely having someone there that understands the industry, understands sort of the sort of good and bad times really that the industry goes through is definitely important. In terms, obviously, yourself, because I know you started in construction. How has that affected your career? Because obviously you mentioned I appreciate you mentioning it in terms of how it's helped your career in terms of understanding it from the construction side. How is that in terms of adding a bit more detail? How has that benefited your career? Because obviously I know you've got a lot of clients that you've worked with and some of the clients you've had for many, many years. How has that affected as a whole?
It's been really beneficial. You to be able to walk around a site and understand those points really helps. I like learning. We were talking before about the law and all those things. The law is important and law is needed, but the law is a means to get that transaction through and process for the clients. And so, equally, whilst it's not always possible in terms of the location and the distance and time, getting out and being able to touch and see and sort of feel a site and understand things, I see myself as a bit of a sponge. So whenever I'm on a site, I'm always asking loads of questions and trying to understand better, because I think having that understanding allows us to understand the commercialities of what's going on, the timings, and other relevant aspects to it. And I, wherever I can, take out the more junior members in the team to those sites as well, so they can start to learn it and see it and understand it. Property's a weird one. When I got into law originally, or before I actually sort of started practicing, I almost thought I was probably going to do a different area of law than what I do, and one where I would help people. That doesn't mean I don't help people in what I do, but I do take a tremendous amount of pride in you drive past or you walk past or you see a building or you see a development or something like that, and you think, I was involved in that. Okay, yeah, just doing the legals, but in doing that meant that transaction could go ahead, or that care home with 72 beds for people with dementia is there and providing a service.
Well, exactly. And you've got to protect clients.
Some of them for longer than I'm going to be here for.
Well, exactly. And like you said, you are definitely adding a lot of value. You're helping a lot of people, especially if especially in the care sector. Like you said, it is the legals, but you've allowed that transaction to happen. You've made the deal to get done. So there's definitely a lot of value that you're offering for sure. I mean, outside of property, Thomas, what sort of things do you like to get up to at the weekend in terms of, obviously, kids-wise? You have kids, you spend a lot of time with the kids. Is there any particular sort of sports that hobbies you take up? Is there anything in particular that you sort of do then?
Yeah, I've got 4 kids. Eldest is 13 and the youngest is 10 weeks. So dad taxi quite a bit of the time for their different activities. Love spending time with them. Yeah, really, really important. I think you don't suddenly become a parent. It happens over a period of time, and you learn so much from your children, and they're all very different, which is fantastic. So I spend a lot of time with the family. Sport-wise, I've always played a lot of sport. I play rugby, although 2 weeks ago I played my last league match for Chester, who I played for the last 19 seasons. You get to a point where your body probably needs a bit of a break of it. Playing golf, I think I've got plenty of years to play golf, so I could do being better at that, and tennis, and just out and about. I love travel as well. So does Sarah. So love to travel to different places, different cultures, and experience different things, and let my children see that as well.
For sure, definitely. Rugby. Have you always been a rugby league man? Have you ever played union?
No, this is union actually, not league.
Ah,
I didn't take up rugby till I went to university. Actually, I went to a school which did other sports, so I played them more so. And at university, just sort of hit with it and really enjoyed it. And it's an interesting. I mean, in many sports, it took a while to understand the game and how it works and sort of be able to see the game. But I love it, and that off pitch spirit and that camaraderie that exists, not just in rugby, but in other sports. I'm a big team player, and that helps in an environment where you're working with other professionals. It helps in an environment managing people and working with colleagues. And it helps because fundamentally on a transaction in property, you're part of a team. You've got the client, you've got the legal advisor, you've got the accountant, you've got the architect, you've got the builder. Different people all come together and have got to collaborate and work effectively.
For sure, definitely. I mean, my family's come massively from rugby. One of my granddads played for England back in the day in the sort of 50s, 60s. So I've sort of followed rugby. So
wow, was that league then?
That was union.
Okay.
So Eric Evans, it was captain 1956. So yeah, no, I do love rugby, and what rugby has taught me, I'm sure you'll agree yourself. And I always look at, I don't like to do a comparison because I do love football. I don't like to do a comparison between the two, but I think just the basic sort of principle of having respect for the referee, I think is massive in rugby. I mean, you see, I think I can't remember his surname. There's a Welsh rugby player. He's only a small chap. He's a guy. I think he's called Nigel. I can't remember his surname.
Nigel Evans. He's a referee.
Yeah. Honestly, I always just put the videos on when I walk with a friend or whatever, and just say, look how much respect these rugby players. I mean, these guys are 250 pounds, 6'5", and they've got this little 5.5 foot rugby ref who's just getting all the respect. And I think coming back to how you can apply that in business, I think, like you said, it's just having that respect for people, having respect for the colleagues. When someone's in charge of doing something or someone's leading a project, it's been allowed them to do what they need to do best. So yeah, rugby's a good sport. I mean, unfortunately, I had to sort of part ways with it because a couple of different injuries. Had a few interesting large heavyweight props land on my shoulder when I called Sunday morning a few times. So yeah,
I think you're right. The respect thing's key. It's difficult to say. We've got in the modern age of digital, isn't it? The video and VAR and the referees. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. My view fundamentally, and this isn't to have a go at football, but the way they've done VAR surprises me in football, because at the end of the day, in rugby, as I understand it and as I see it when I watch it, ultimately the referee is the rule of law for that day, and so they can ask their television match official to assist them, and they can guide them onto specific points. And if they didn't see anything, they can say, look, what's your recommendation? And they can run with it, but ultimately they make the decision. Whereas in VAR, seemingly, whatever the referee says can be overridden. So that point you make of rugby versus football and that relationship and respect that exists, I do worry that can be affected. It is certainly important, to have that respect, and you see it on the rugby pitch, definitely, at all levels.
For sure, definitely, and that you definitely do see it at all levels. Even like I said, going up to sort of the biggest games in the world with the biggest teams. In terms, obviously, with once Thomas has sort of finished his career and is obviously finished doing as much as he can for the law industry as well as giving back to the industry we're in. You mentioned obviously leaving a legacy behind. What would that look like in terms of legacy? Obviously, is that amount of people helped? Is that a milestone sort of progressing in your career? What would that sort of legacy look like if you were to look back in 10 years past your career and think, yeah, I did a pretty good job at that?
I suppose starting firstly with JMW, I'd like to leave a legacy whereby the real estate department is in a very good shape. From when I first joined, we were quite a small department, and it's grown exponentially. Size isn't everything on that perspective, but ensuring that we're doing decent work for our clients and servicing them well. I'd like that to carry on, but also expand in terms of the nature and the projects that we do. From a legacy perspective, picking up on what we talked about before in relation to that pride you take in buildings and developments, I've done over 2,500 beds in care, and I'm sure that will carry on. So being able to look back and think, I helped and provided. We've got an aging population, and the need and the demand for that. I think within Greater Manchester, as I understand it, within the next 15 years, we'll have an extra 1.1 million people over 65. And whilst it'd be good if those people could stay in their own homes, the reality is all of them won't be able to. And so to ensure that there is that sort of legacy and assisted in that is important for me.
For sure. Definitely. No, I appreciate you sharing that. Definitely, even like you mentioned with the care sector, I think there is so much value to be offered. And I think you do sort of come finish your work day and you think, yeah, I've actually helped people in many different levels, in many different ways.
And in the wider context, new clients and those relationships, as I said, being able to introduce them, seeing you act with some people and they, a bit cliche, but they sort of start as acorns, and not all of them do, but a lot of them grow into oaks. So being able over my career to be able to work with people who grow their businesses and you help them in the good times and the bad and grow through and see them flourish. So the more interactions and introductions I can do over my career to people and help them progress, the better that is for me, really, in the wider business community.
No, I agree. In terms of obviously someone starting out as a junior, for example, in law, who may have just, like I said, has just recently been qualified or is starting at sort of the bottom within law, what sort of key advice would you be giving to them? Like I said, is it to get out to become a great networker? Is it to read the most books of law? What sort of key things is someone that's starting out as a junior that comes to JMW, for example?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm fortunate, and for the last 6 years of sat on, we have a trainee panel of partners who recruit our trainees, and we do the recruitment once a year, and we see circa 60 to 70 people for about 12 jobs. It varies each year. And we take it really seriously. One of my partners, Richard Powell, heads it up. He's always in every single interview. And then he has 2 others of us within the interview. And you see varying different CVs, very competitive in relation to their academic results. And I always take somebody at face value. So that's important. But certainly, and there is a challenge to this, the more experience you can get in work experience and working in different environments, particularly within the law, is important, and being able to demonstrate that. That's not to say that we wholly just look at people who are just all about the law, because sometimes you get a curveball or something that's a bit different, and somebody who can bring something else to bear. So just getting out there from a networking perspective, and that's not for everybody, and it's not necessarily needed for everybody. So I think genuinely just being yourself. Yes, do your studies and that element, and look at what you can do extracurricular to interact and learn more, because equally and importantly, the more you do that, it's going to give you a bit of a reality of whether that is actually the career for you or whether there's something different. You see many people who have maybe started in law or studies and then gone and done different stuff. In fact, I was listening back on a podcast you did a while ago with Adam Higgins of Capital and Centric, and they've done really well. And he said something that kind of struck home, in that if you were to look at a lot of property developers and people like that, and people who've done well in real estate, they're not necessarily people who've gone into great academia. That's not saying there aren't, but others who, left school at 16, and there's that ambition and drive and ability to do stuff. That's important. That's what I kind of look for in people, that, the willingness to roll their sleeves up and get stuff done.
Definitely. I think once you've got that foundational sort of drive, I think that allows you to sort of go on to many different things. And like you said, the extracurricular that allows you to, but no one's going to do that extracurricular without the drive. No one's going to push themselves to meet new people, for example, without that basic drive. So no, definitely, I think it's, there's definitely some value to be added for sure on that. I mean, as a tradition, we like to sort of round things off with a nice quote and a coffee. In terms of, as a quote then, Thomas, that you sort of live by, you say to your kids or you say to people at work, for example, whatever that quote would be, and also if you to have a coffee that you could only have for the rest of your life, what would that quote and what would that coffee be?
We'll start with the coffee first, because that's easy, because I don't drink coffee or tea. So it'd probably be a hot chocolate, and if it was being naughty, with marshmallows and cream. Quote wise, you get back what you put in. I'm a firm believer in hard work. I didn't get to where I am today and won't get to, and I don't see myself as arrived. It's a permanent work in progress for everybody. I'm a real hard grafter and hard worker, and I've just really stuck at it. And I think people do reap the rewards of that. So it's important to just keep persevering and keep trying, obviously trying and persevering in the right direction. But if you keep doing that and keep working hard, that will make the difference.
Definitely. I mean, a quote that I always sort of link back to on sort of the hard work element is you don't get full-time results from a part-time work ethic. I mean, it's just all these people in this sort of society. I mean, coming from like an internet age and everything that's been online these days, everyone's sort of trying to look for that quick fix. And it's sort of a natural instinct to look for that quick fix. But like you said, it's just that hard work. It just comes down to that nitty-gritty of just getting involved, getting stuck in. And sometimes you do have to do those long hours. I mean, especially in law and especially in the property industry, you're pulled in a million and one different directions. So I appreciate that.
What's the other one? It's the only time success comes before work is in the dictionary.
That's very true. I like that. I've never actually heard that one before, so I appreciate that. I'll be using that.
It's one of my colleagues, actually, so I can't profess to own that one.
No, but I know I like that. I like that a lot. That's and it's so true. I think that's just, like I said, once you've got that foundation, foundational but sort of basics, sort of, right, I'm here to work, I'm here to put the graft in, then that allows you, that you create your own opportunities and you create your own luck. But that starts with hard work. Thomas, I appreciate you having you on. We are.
Pleasure. Thanks for the invitation, and it's been a pleasure.
No problem. I would love to do, and I'm sure we will do when it's all sort of settles down. We'll get another sort of an update sort of podcast episode in as well. We can sort of talk a bit more sort of nitty gritty sort of from a legal standpoint. We can get into sort of things, how businesses and, for example, developers can get things right over the next 12 months as well. So, Thomas, great to have you on. You have a great day, and we'll speak to you soon.
Likewise. Thanks, Jake. Pleasure.
Thomas, have a great day. Take care.